How are we doing, Formula 1 fans? Welcome to another F1 Manager 22 video, and today we're going to go through how to get the most out of practice sessions. Now, a lot of people have asked me what's the best way to do setups. We do have a setups video. Now, every setup is different to every car, every driver, depending on your development, etc. There's like hundreds of thousands of, probably millions of different possibilities, so I can't make a video for each track and say this is the best setup for 100%, do that. That would be virtually impossible because that would be dependent on you guys and how you developed your car as well. What I am going to try and teach you though is the best way to get the most out of your engine parts, your car parts, and also how to kind of instruct your driver to save those parts, and also how you can boost that setup confidence. But most of that will be in the other video, so do check that out on the channel. When you go into a practice session, we're at the Dutch Grand Prix here, practice 1. What I tend to do, go into your car parts first, okay? Don't worry too much about your chassis, front wing, rear wing, side pods, underfloor suspension. Those are kind of just the factory parts. The one thing, or the three things to look at are your engine, your ERS, and your gearbox. Now, you'll notice I've got 2 here with minor damage. The reason being, during practice, there is no point using a good engine. This is very much micromanaging your car parts and kind of lowering the amount of penalties you will get throughout the season. Now, I haven't been fantastic on this Red Bull save because this is what I use just for a bit of fun on my own. I have been doing a Has to Glory where I've been really micromanaging every element. But the best thing to do in practice, pick the engine that has the most wear. You can ideally go down to maybe 15% before you're kind of really starting to get worried. But you'll see here I've got an engine with 42%, an engine with 49%, an engine with 42%, and this is my race engine. So this is like the race and qualifying engine. So as the engine parts get more and more worn, as the condition drops, their performance also drops. Very important to use your best and most powerful engine parts for qualifying if you want to be starting up the grid, and also for the race because you want the best chance of winning. That sounds obvious, I know. Same with the RS. You can go in, you can see here I've kind of got one on 75%, I've got one on 62%, and one on 54%. There are certain tracks where you can look to take big penalties and spend, I think it's $1 million on each engine part. However, A, that is a lot of money, and B, that puts you sort of towards the back of the grid, if not at the back of the grid. So, very difficult. You can do it in places like Belgium. They're great. They've done that in real life just recently, a lot of teams. Also, you can do it at places like Monza is a very good one. Maybe sort of Brazil as well, Sao Paulo towards the end. But if you're really clever, you can kind of come in and just keep using these, like a 28% gearbox. I then go over to car number 2, which has Lando Norris in. 36% engine. You can see I've got 2 fairly fresh-ish engines. ERS, I've got 3 that are all fairly well balanced. And I've got a gearbox here that's pretty good for practice. And then I've got some slightly more powerful ones for the races. Now, you can also reduce the damage done by putting the drivers in conserve mode on the pace. Also fuel usage on low as well. Your ERS strategy you can just kind of leave if you want, or you can just put it on harvest. Yes, during practice you will be back of the grid. You don't score any points in practice unless you've had some weird outcome for regulation changes. I know there's been a few regulation changes floating around. Double points for the last race, cost caps, things like that. Constructors' Championship pricing changes, rewards, money. So there's a lot of different changes. I've not seen anything to do with practice though. I usually tend to send them out for about 20 odd laps. Usually call them in beforehand anyway. So I'll quickly dive in and I'll manage this. What I tend to do is just send them both straight out onto the grid. This may look, to some of you guys, this may look similar to the video I did before, which was how to get the most out of your setups and how to set up your car. So what you'll tend to do is just run them round. You can see here, I haven't actually changed Max here, so I'll put Max in conserve mode so that he doesn't really do much. He has done a really good lap, goes first, which is great. But like I said, no points are scored within practice, so it makes no sense to push your engine. It makes no sense to try and push the fuel and basically just add more damage and wear and tear to the engine parts. I would always say, like I said near the start of the video, have one set that is just for practice and just burn them out until they're gone, pretty much. So I would use, if you're smart, just use number 1 for that, number one. it makes it easier, or just the top one. Or, you know, if you've used the first one in the race in Bahrain, you weren't aware of this, make it the next set or whatever. Or buy a brand new set, whatever you want to do. But basically save one set of everything for practice, as it makes life a lot easier.
How's the balance? How's the balance?
I'm struggling and it's getting worse.
Yeah, we copied.
So once they get that 5 out of 5, you'll get that setup confidence. Again, this is very similar to the other video, but I'll just add it on the end here. 4 bads and a great. So what you'll want to do is, you can see the straights are kind of, it's on the high end of his optimal setup range, and he says it's bad. So what you probably want to do is go right down to the bottom. With the traction as well, you probably want that to go right down towards the bottom. You might get away with cornering being slightly high. Braking stability is already relatively good. It says it's great, in fact. So if you do something like that, you can then confirm it. You'll get that sort of 4 minutes of in-game time where they'll do the changes.
Everything okay with the car, Max?
Max now says he's coming in.
Yeah, well, we're just too slow.
We're just too slow. I mean,
Understood.
He doesn't take into account the fact that I've put him on like no tyre wear, etc., etc. He's done 43%, so he's not as bad. However, I'm assuming they need to go right the way down. We'll make a few quick changes and modifications to it, and we'll see if that helps in the slightest. Maybe something like that. Doing this in practice is very much a guessing game. It's very difficult to say this is the best thing to do. The one thing I have advised people, though, especially on the live streams on Twitch, is that what you do is when you set it up in the lobby, is you choose to move the sliders kind of slightly further towards one end or the other, not in the middle. Because if they move it to one end and it says good, you know, like, you're sort of heading in the right direction. Whereas if it's smack bang in the middle, you don't know whether it's up or down. If you slide it to one end, like I had the sliders there for the rear wing, for example, you know for a fact if it's at the high end and he says it's bad, you've got to go to the lower end. So it's just kind of trying to be smart, figure out exactly where you want those sliders to be. It is a guessing game. I don't think there's going to be ever a situation where I could say this percentage, this angle, I don't think any of that will help, because you'd have to have exactly the same drivers, exactly the same car development, with the exact same wind tunnel hours, with the exact same engineer bonuses, with the rushed intense, you know, if you went intense instead of regular or whatever, there'd be so many different variables and factors that you'd have to cater for, which would almost be impossible to get right. So I'd rather just advise you guys on where to move the sliders roughly, set them to one end. Here you go. So Lando's just come round. Now he says the balance is good.
It's pretty even.
So he says it's pretty even. So he'll now be called in. We'll go here. He was on like 32%. He's now up to 57. So with the straights, we've kind of gone a bit too far the other way. So we want to change those. The front wing as well probably needs to go up a little bit. I'm not going to bore you and show you everything again here, but you can see we're kind of getting the angles a lot better. It looks like we're getting closer. Hopefully that helps you guys anyway with kind of like managing your engine, getting the most out of practice. You can simulate practice as well. The one thing I would advise though, take part in practice 1, take part in practice 2. If you've got an older driver, use your reserve driver in FP1, get them the 500 XP points, because you can grow a driver to be a future star. Someone like Porsche, Doohan, I think Daruvula maybe, someone said, Piastri as well, people like that. That's a good idea to do. I've obviously signed Norris for Red Bull, so I'm not really worried about my reserve driver. I've got 2 young, talented drivers anyway. The only other thing I will say, if you then get your percentages, your driver setup confidence to somewhere like 90% during practice 2, if you simulate practice 3, the AI and the computer will automatically give you a couple of percent extra. It won't be a lot. Sometimes it's like 1%, 2%, maybe 3 or 4% if you're lucky, but it just saves you that time of going through practice. If you're like me though, you want to take part in every single session, get the most out of it, fantastic. I have had a couple of setups where I've got 100%. It's just kind of getting lucky, kind of figuring it out, and minor tweaks. But hopefully you guys are having fun with trying to set up the practice, trying to get it right. Hopefully this video does help. Do leave a thumbs up, do subscribe if you do, leave some comments, and I'll see you soon.